"Take your time, I'll wait." He didn't look at her, just kept dabbing at his sleeve with slow, methodical movements, as if he had all the time in the world, as if her humiliation was part of the service he'd paid to receive. Anna stood frozen. The glass weighed 15 pounds in her hand. Her peripheral vision caught faces turning away, conversations resuming, the world continuing while she remained locked at the center of her own mistake. She tried to apologize, opened her mouth. No sound came, and Lucas kept waiting, patient, proving without words that some people have the luxury of turning someone else's embarrassment into time. The glass hit the table harder than Anna intended. Not a crash, just enough sound to slice through conversation and hang in the air too long. Champagne spread fast, across white linen, over the edge, onto Lucas's cuff. Dark fabric, expensive wool, the kind that doesn't forgive mistakes. Anna's hand hovered mid-air, fingers bone-white around the empty glass. Her breath caught and stayed there. She watched the stain seep into fibers that cost more than 3 months of her rent. The dining room didn't stop. It swallowed her mistake whole and kept chewing. Silverware clinked. Someone laughed. A woman 2 tables over sipped wine without glancing up. Anna was drowning in public, and no one was watching. Lucas examined his sleeve slowly, like the champagne was exactly the inconvenience he'd anticipated from someone like her. Then he looked at her, not angry, worse, empty. His eyes moved over her face the way you'd scan a broken appliance before deciding it wasn't worth fixing. No heat, just quiet certainty that she was exactly what he'd assumed. First week, his voice was calm, the tone reserved for children who've shattered something irreplaceable. Anna nodded once. Her throat had closed completely. The apology formed behind her teeth, but her jaw locked. "It shows." 2 words, that's all it took. He pulled a napkin and began dabbing at the champagne, each movement deliberate. Then he paused, lifted his sleeve toward the light, examined the damage, turned it slightly as if offering her a closer look at what she'd ruined. Then he set his arm down gently, as if it no longer mattered. Anna's chest collapsed inward. Her hands trembled so violently, she had to press the glass against her apron. The words were trapped behind the heat crawling up her neck, behind the suffocating awareness that 30 people had just watched her fail and decided she wasn't worth remembering. Lucas glanced toward the maitre d', just a look. The maitre d' appeared within seconds, already gesturing Anna back, already removing the evidence before it spread further. Anna stepped back. 2 steps, 3. Her legs didn't feel attached to her body. Lucas returned to his conversation mid-sentence, as if she'd already ceased to exist. Anna turned toward the kitchen. Her pulse hammered so loud it drowned out the jazz, the laughter, the voices. She kept her face smooth, neutral, but her chest felt like it was caving in. She pushed through the kitchen doors and exhaled. Long, shaking, the kind of breath you take when you've been underwater too long. "Bad table?" Maria didn't look up from the prep station, just offered the question like a rope thrown into dark water. Anna shook her head. "I'm fine." Maria didn't push. She'd recognized the moment. The one where someone's dignity gets folded into a napkin and set aside, where you learn that to some people you're not a person at all, just scenery, a mistake in motion. Anna set the glass down, her hands still shaking. She pressed her palms flat against the cold metal and breathed. Once, twice, 3 times. Then she picked up the next tray, rolled her shoulders back, smoothed her apron, and walked back out. Golden light poured through tall windows, casting long shadows across marble that had absorbed 1,000 humiliations without comment. People like Lucas sat in curated clusters, surrounded by linen and crystal, and the unspoken understanding that the world bent for them, that mistakes were made by other people. Anna moved between tables with surgical precision, each step measured. She didn't look toward his table, but she felt it, the weight of being seen, really seen, and then erased, as if she'd been evaluated in real time, and found so lacking that even anger would have been wasted. Some mistakes you recover from, others carve themselves into your spine and follow you to every table, every shift, every moment you dare to believe you belong somewhere you don't. 3 weeks passed. Anna learned the rhythm, how to move through the dining room without being noticed, how to read a table before approaching, how to make herself smaller when necessary, shoulders in, voice low, presence reduced to function. She learned which guests wanted conversation and which wanted silence, which tables tipped well and which didn't tip at all. She learned to anticipate needs before they were spoken, to disappear the moment her service was complete. The incident with Lucas became background noise, a story Maria told new hires as a warning, a moment that happened and then stopped mattering to everyone except the person it happened to. Anna didn't think about it, except when she did, when she poured champagne, and her hand hesitated for half a second, when she passed tables of men in dark suits speaking in low tones about mergers and acquisitions, when she caught herself checking her reflection in the kitchen's steel surfaces, searching for whatever it was that made her so easy to dismiss. But she got better, faster, more efficient. The manager noticed, gave her better sections, better shifts. She started making enough to cover rent without touching her savings, started sleeping more than 5 hours a night. It felt like progress, until the day Margaret walked in. Anna didn't recognize her at first. Just another woman in her late 60s, elegant but understated, moving through the dining room with the careful precision of someone who didn't quite trust the space around her. She wore a simple dress, expensive, but not showy. Her handbag was real leather, worn at the corners. She looked lost, not physically, emotionally, like someone who'd been brought somewhere they didn't choose and were trying to make the best of it. Anna watched her pause near the entrance, glancing around the room with an expression that wasn't quite discomfort, but wasn't ease either. The maitre d' approached, gestured toward a table by the window. Margaret followed, but her movements were stiff, uncertain. She sat alone. Anna moved through her section, clearing plates, refilling glasses, but her attention kept drifting back to the woman by the window. Margaret opened the menu, studied it for a long time, then closed it without ordering. Just sat there, hands folded in her lap, staring out at the street. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The maitre d' noticed, approached the table with his practiced smile, leaned in slightly, said something Anna couldn't hear. Margaret shook her head, polite, apologetic. He lingered for a moment, then retreated. Anna finished refilling a water glass at table 12, set the pitcher down, and made a decision she didn't fully understand. She walked over. "Excuse me." Margaret looked up. Her expression shifted. Surprise, then something softer. Relief, maybe. Anna kept her voice gentle. "Can I help you with anything? The menu can be a bit overwhelming if it's your first time here." Margaret smiled. Small. Genuine. "Is it that obvious?" "Not at all." Anna pulled out her notepad but didn't write anything, just held it loosely like a prop. "We have some lighter options that aren't listed. If you'd like, I can walk you through them." Margaret's shoulders dropped slightly, the tension easing. "That would be lovely, thank you." Anna spent the next few minutes explaining dishes in plain language, skipping the French names and pretentious descriptions. She pointed out what was filling and what wasn't, what could be modified and what couldn't. Margaret listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and eventually ordered a simple salad and tea. "You're very kind," Margaret said as Anna finished writing. Anna shook her head. "Just doing my job." "No." Margaret's eyes held hers for a moment. Steady, certain. "You're not." Anna felt something shift in her chest. Small, uncomfortable. She wasn't used to being seen that way, as someone who'd chosen kindness rather than performed it. She excused herself, put the order in and returned to her section, but she kept checking on Margaret, more than necessary, refilled her tea before it was empty, made sure her salad came out exactly as ordered, brought extra bread without being asked. Margaret didn't say much, just ate slowly, occasionally glancing out the window, lost in thoughts Anna couldn't read. When the check came, Margaret paid in cash, left a tip that was exactly 20%. Nothing excessive, nothing that said she pitied Anna or wanted to make a statement, just fair. As she stood to leave, she caught Anna's eye across the room and nodded once. A small gesture, acknowledgement without performance. Anna nodded back, and then Margaret was gone. Anna cleared the table, pocketed the tip, and moved on to the next service. She didn't think about it much, didn't assign it meaning. But 2 days later, Margaret came back. "This is just the beginning. Subscribe now and stay with us until the end." Margaret didn't ask for Anna's section. She didn't need to. The maitre d' seated her at the same table by the window, and Anna simply appeared, notepad in hand, without waiting to be assigned. "Good afternoon," Anna said. Margaret looked up, and something in her face softened. Not a smile, just recognition, the kind that acknowledged continuity without making it strange. "Hello again." Anna didn't ask if she needed help with the menu this time, just waited, patient, present. Margaret ordered the same salad, the same tea. Anna wrote it down, even though she'd already memorized it, and disappeared into the rhythm of service. But this time, when she brought the tea, Margaret spoke. "Do you work every day?" Anna set the cup down carefully. "Most days. I have another job in the evenings." Margaret's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Not pity, something quieter, understanding, maybe. "That must be exhausting," Anna shrugged. "It's manageable." She didn't elaborate, didn't explain that manageable meant surviving, not thriving, that it meant choosing between sleep and safety nets, that some months one job covered rent and the other covered everything else, and there was no room left for anything that wasn't essential. Margaret didn't push, just nodded, as if Anna had said more than she had. The conversation ended there. Anna returned to her section. Margaret ate in silence, paid in cash, left 20%, and came back 3 days later, then 4 days after that, then twice in 1 week. It became a pattern, quiet, unspoken. Margaret would arrive mid-afternoon, always alone, always at the same table. She'd order variations of the same meal, something light, something simple, tea instead of wine. She'd sit for an hour, sometimes longer, watching the street or reading a book she brought in a worn leather bag, and Anna would take care of her, not because she had to. The maitre d' could have assigned Margaret to any server, but Anna found herself drifting toward that table, checking in without hovering, refilling tea before it went cold, bringing extra lemon without being asked. Margaret never demanded attention, never flagged her down or made requests that required effort. She existed in the space with the kind of consideration that came from someone who understood what it meant to serve, even if she'd never done it herself. Anna noticed things. The way Margaret's hands trembled slightly when she lifted her cup, the way she sometimes paused mid-bite, staring at nothing, as if she'd forgotten where she was, the way she arrived alone and left alone, and never once mentioned meeting someone or waiting for anyone. She was lonely, not desperately, not visibly, but in the way that settles into people when they've spent too long in spaces filled with everything except connection. Anna understood that, recognized it, had felt it herself in rooms full of people who looked through her instead of at her. So she stayed attentive, not performatively, just present. She brought Margaret's tea the way she liked it, remembered she preferred her salad without onions, noticed when she seemed tired and didn't force conversation. And Margaret in turn noticed her, not in the way guests usually noticed servers, with complaints or corrections or demands for efficiency, but in the way people notice each other when pretense falls away, when the roles stop mattering and what's left is just two people existing in the same space with mutual respect. One afternoon, after Margaret had finished her tea, she looked up at Anna and asked a question that wasn't about the menu. "How long have you worked here?" Anna paused, tray balanced on one hand. "A little over a month. Do you like it?" It was a simple question, but the way Margaret asked it, without judgment, without expectation, made it feel like it mattered. Anna considered lying, saying yes, because that's what you were supposed to say. But something about Margaret's steady gaze made dishonesty feel wrong. "It's fine," Anna said carefully. "The people are professional. The work is predictable, but you don't love it." It wasn't accusatory, just observant. Anna allowed herself a small smile. "I don't think anyone loves this kind of work, but it pays, and that's enough." Margaret nodded slowly. She didn't argue, didn't offer platitudes about following dreams or finding passion, just accepted Anna's reality as valid without trying to fix it. "You're good at it," Margaret said after a moment. "Not just competent, thoughtful." Anna felt something tighten in her chest. Compliments from guests weren't rare, but they usually came with tips attached, transactional and fleeting. This felt different, like Margaret had actually seen her, not as a function, as a person. "Thank you," Anna said quietly. Margaret smiled, small, genuine, then returned to her tea. Anna moved back to her section, but the words stayed with her, pressed against something fragile inside her chest, a reminder that being seen, really seen, wasn't something she'd realized she'd been missing until someone offered it. 2 weeks later, Margaret invited her to tea. The invitation came quietly. Margaret had finished her meal, set her napkin down with practiced precision, and looked up at Anna with something close to hesitation. "I know this might be unusual, but I wondered if you'd be willing to visit sometime, for tea, at my home." Anna's hand stilled on the tray. Guests didn't do this, didn't cross the invisible line separating service from anything resembling friendship. They left tips and compliments, sometimes remembered names, but they didn't invite you into their lives. "You don't have to," Margaret added quickly. "I just thought you've been very kind, and I don't have many people to talk to these days. Not desperate, not pleading, just honest." Anna should have said no, should have offered polite excuses about boundaries and schedules. That's what made sense. But Margaret wasn't looking at her like a guest looked at a server. "When?" Anna asked. Relief flickered across Margaret's face. "Whenever you're free, I'm home most afternoons." They exchanged information. An address in a neighborhood Anna had only passed through on buses, a phone number on the back of a receipt. Margaret pressed the paper into Anna's hand with gentle firmness. "Thank you," she said, and the gratitude wasn't for accepting, it was for considering it at all. 3 days later, on her only afternoon off, Anna stood outside an elegant townhouse, finger hovering over the doorbell. The house was beautiful. Old money, the kind that didn't announce itself, but simply existed. Tall windows, ivy on stone walls, a garden carefully maintained but not overly manicured. Anna almost turned around. The door opened. Margaret stood there in a cardigan and simple slacks, looking more comfortable than Anna had ever seen her. Her face brightened. "You came." The interior was understated. Elegant furniture that had been lived with, not showcased. Books that had been read. Photographs not perfectly arranged. It felt like a home. Margaret led her to a sitting room where tea was already prepared. Simple porcelain, good tea, small pastries. They sat. Conversation moved carefully at first. Weather, neighborhood, the tea. Anna felt the weight of the space, the casual expense of everything, the distance between Margaret's life and her own. But Margaret didn't perform wealth, didn't mention the house or furniture, just poured tea and asked simple questions that had nothing to do with work. What did Anna like to read? Did she have family nearby? What did she do on days off? Anna answered carefully, measuring each response. But Margaret listened in a way that made the answers feel like they mattered, not as data, as pieces of a person she was genuinely interested in knowing. Slowly, Anna relaxed. She mentioned her second job at a bookstore, how she'd moved to the city 3 years ago with plans that had dissolved into survival. Small things, a park she liked, a neighbor's cat that visited her fire escape. Margaret shared, too, about loneliness, how her husband had passed 2 years ago and her son was always busy, and she'd realized she'd stopped having conversations that weren't transactional. "Everyone's very polite," Margaret said, stirring her tea. "But politeness isn't the same as connection." Anna understood that, had felt it in every interaction where she was smiled at, but not seen. They talked for over an hour. When Anna finally stood to leave, Margaret walked her to the door. "Would you come again?" Anna hesitated, not because she didn't want to, but because she wasn't sure what this was becoming, whether crossing this line would create complications she couldn't afford. But Margaret's expression held no pressure, just hope, the fragile kind already prepared for disappointment. "Yes," Anna said, "I'd like that." The visits became routine, a pocket of time where Anna wasn't a server, and Margaret wasn't a customer, where they were just two people drinking tea. Margaret never mentioned the restaurant, never brought up their first meeting, or the roles they'd occupied. She treated Anna as if they'd always known each other this way, as equals. And somewhere in those quiet afternoons, Anna stopped performing, stopped measuring her words or making herself smaller. She laughed more easily, disagreed without fear, let herself exist fully without apologizing for taking up room. Margaret's loneliness faded slightly, replaced by something warmer. Neither of them named what was happening. They just let it exist. But other people noticed. One afternoon as Anna was leaving Margaret's house, a black car pulled up. The driver opened the back door. A man emerged, tall, well-dressed, moving with confidence that came from never questioning whether he belonged. "Lucas." He looked at Anna, then at the house, then back at Anna. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Recognition without acknowledgement. Anna's chest tightened. She'd avoided him at the restaurant for weeks. Different shifts, different sections, the careful choreography of remaining invisible. But here on his mother's doorstep, invisibility wasn't an option. Lucas didn't speak, just held her gaze 2 seconds longer than necessary, then walked past her toward the door. Anna forced herself to keep walking, to not look back, to not let her hands shake. But she felt it, the weight of being seen again, not as a person, as an error, a thing that didn't belong. Lucas didn't ask about Anna, not that day, not the next time he visited. He'd arrive, greet his mother with careful affection, and settle into conversations about business, schedules, things that needed handling. Margaret would listen, respond appropriately, but something in her had changed. She was lighter, more present. The careful distance she usually maintained had softened. She smiled more, spoke more freely, seemed less like someone enduring time and more like someone inhabiting it, Lucas noticed. The way she moved through her home with more purpose, the way she mentioned small things, a book she'd read, a thought that had occurred to her, as if her days contained substance again. The fresh flowers on the sitting room table, the tea set always out, as if she'd been expecting someone. "You look well," he said one afternoon. Margaret smiled. "I feel well. Has something changed?" She looked at him, deciding how much to share. "I've been spending time with a friend. It's been good for me." Lucas nodded, didn't push. He was glad she'd found connection, even if he didn't understand where it had come from. If someone had eased her loneliness, he was grateful. 2 weeks later, Lucas arrived unannounced. His meeting had ended early. He'd been in the area. It seemed logical to stop by. He let himself in with his key, called out, "Mother, in here." Her voice came from the sitting room, warm, relaxed. Lucas walked in and stopped. His mother wasn't alone. Anna sat on the sofa, teacup in hand. Mid-conversation. She looked different here, not smaller, not performing careful invisibility, just present, comfortable. She saw him. Her expression shifted, not quite fear, but close. Recognition, the sudden awareness that the distance she'd maintained had just collapsed. Margaret looked between them, confusion flickering across her face. "Lucas, I didn't know you were coming. I should have called." His voice was even, but his eyes stayed on Anna, not hostile. Just assessing, trying to reconcile the person in his mother's home with the server who'd spilled champagne on him 6 weeks ago. Anna set her teacup down carefully. "I should go." "You don't have to." Margaret started. "I have a shift." Anna stood, gathered her bag with the efficiency of knowing when to exit. "Thank you for tea." Margaret's face fell slightly, but she didn't argue, just walked Anna to the door while Lucas remained in the sitting room, watching the space where Anna had been. When Margaret returned, her expression had shifted to something more guarded. "That was Anna," she said. "Not defensive, factual." Lucas nodded. "I gathered. She's been visiting for a few weeks now. She's a lovely person. She works at Belmont." "Not a question." "She does." Margaret sat in the chair Anna had vacated. Movement slower now. "Is that a problem?" Lucas considered the question. Because people who served didn't usually cross into personal spaces. Because his mother had always maintained boundaries. Because Anna was someone he'd dismissed. And seeing her here, treated as an equal, created dissonance he couldn't process. "You seem happy," he said instead. Margaret's expression softened. "I am." She listens, Lucas. Really listens. Not because she has to, because she wants to. Something in her voice. Not accusation, but implication. A quiet suggestion that real listening had become rare enough to feel remarkable. Lucas absorbed that, felt the weight settle uncomfortably. "I'm glad you have that," he said, and he meant it, even if it forced him to reconsider assumptions he hadn't realized he was making. Margaret studied him, then reached for the teapot, poured another cup, and changed the subject, but something had shifted. Anna didn't return for 2 weeks. She texted Margaret, apologetic, citing work schedules that were true but not the whole truth. Margaret responded with understanding, warmth that made Anna's chest ache. The truth was simpler and more complicated. Anna couldn't reconcile the two spaces, couldn't be the person Margaret saw while knowing Lucas saw something else entirely, couldn't sit in that sitting room pretending the memory of his empty stare didn't follow her there. She'd been dismissed once, erased, and she'd survived by accepting that some people would never see her as anything other than a function, a mistake. But Margaret saw her differently, and the gap between those realities felt too wide to navigate. So she stayed away, worked her shifts, kept her head down, moved through the restaurant with practiced invisibility, tried not to think about the sitting room and the woman who'd made her feel like a person instead of a problem. Margaret texted after the second week, "I miss our conversations. No pressure, just wanted you to know." Anna stared at the message for a long time. Then, against every instinct telling her to maintain distance, she replied, "I miss them too. I'll come by Thursday." Because some connections, once formed, were harder to walk away from than she'd expected, even when walking away would have been simpler. Anna returned on Thursday. She almost didn't. Stood outside Margaret's door for a full minute, every instinct screaming this was a mistake. That crossing back into this space meant risking something she couldn't afford to lose. But Margaret had texted that morning, looking forward to today. So Anna pressed the bell. Margaret answered immediately, face brightening, in a way that made Anna's chest tighten. "I'm so glad you came." They settled into their usual rhythm. Tea, conversation, comfortable silence. Margaret didn't mention Lucas, Didn't acknowledge the tension from their last meeting, just poured tea and asked about Anna's week, as if nothing had changed, but something had. Anna felt it in the way she chose words more carefully, in the awareness that this space wasn't entirely safe anymore, that someone else knew she was here, and that knowing created vulnerability. Still, she stayed, because Margaret's presence had become something Anna hadn't realized she needed. A pocket of time where she wasn't performing. They talked about books, the changing season, small frustrations and smaller joys, nothing profound, just life shared between two people who'd accidentally found friendship. When Anna left, Margaret walked her to the door. Same time next week? Anna hesitated, then nodded. Same time. Lucas started visiting more frequently. Not obviously, just stopping by after meetings, checking in, making sure his mother had what she needed. Margaret noticed, didn't comment, but Lucas's visits began to overlap with Anna's. The first time felt like coincidence. He arrived while Anna was leaving, passed her on the steps with a nod that was neither warm nor cold. The second time felt less like coincidence. He arrived while Anna was still there, let himself in, joined them in the sitting room, sat across from them, accepted tea. The conversation became stilted. Anna measured every word. Lucas said little, just observed. Present but not engaged. Anna left earlier than usual. Margaret's expression tightened as she watched her go. "You're making her uncomfortable," Margaret said when Anna had gone. Lucas set his teacup down. "I'm not trying to." "Then what are you trying to do?" He didn't have an answer. He was curious, unsettled, trying to reconcile the version of Anna he'd dismissed with the version his mother clearly valued. "I don't understand this," he said finally. "Why her? Why someone from—" He stopped, reconsidered. "Why someone you barely know?" Margaret's expression hardened. "I know her better than I know most people. She listens, she cares, she treats me like a person, not an obligation." The implication hung between them, heavy, unavoidable. "I care," Lucas said quietly. "I know you do." Margaret's voice softened. "But caring and being present aren't the same thing. Anna is present. She shows up because she wants to, not because she should." Lucas had no response because it was true. He visited out of duty, affection, responsibility. Anna visited out of choice, and that difference mattered more than he'd realized. The third time Lucas showed up during Anna's visit, something shifted. He didn't just observe. He participated, asked Anna simple questions about work, the city, nothing invasive. Just conversation, the kind people have when trying to find common ground. Anna answered carefully at first, guarded. But Lucas's tone wasn't condescending, wasn't the empty politeness from the restaurant. It was genuine, or close enough that Anna couldn't maintain her walls. They talked about a book Margaret had mentioned, a cafe near Anna's bookstore job, city rent and transit delays. Small things. Ordinary things, unremarkable except for the fact that it was happening at all. Margaret watched them with cautious hope. When Anna left that day, Lucas walked her to the door. They stood in the entryway, silent, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. "Thank you," Lucas said finally. Anna looked at him, confused. "For what?" "For being kind to my mother. She's happier than I've seen her in years." Anna didn't know how to reconcile this version of Lucas, sincere, almost vulnerable, with the man who'd looked at her like she was something broken and disposable. "She's easy to be kind to," Anna said quietly. Lucas nodded, opened the door. "I mean it. Thank you." Anna left without responding, but the words followed her. Over the following weeks, Lucas's presence became less intrusive, less like surveillance, and more like genuine interest. He'd join their conversations occasionally, contribute observations, ask questions. He listened when Margaret spoke in a way Anna suspected he hadn't in a long time. Really listened, not waiting to speak, just present. And slowly, so slowly Anna almost didn't notice, he started looking at her differently, not with dismissal, not with confusion, but with something closer to curiosity, as if he was seeing her for the first time and realizing he'd missed something essential. Anna felt it, the shift, the way his gaze lingered half a second longer, the way he remembered details she'd mentioned, the way he started arriving at times that coincided with her visits. It wasn't obvious, wasn't performative, just present. Like gravity, quiet, inevitable, impossible to ignore once you noticed it. And Anna, despite every reason not to, noticed. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. Lucas stopped arriving by coincidence, started texting his mother beforehand, casual questions about her plans, whether she'd be home. Margaret saw through it, didn't comment, just told him when Anna would be visiting. He started showing up consistently, joining conversations that became easier each time, more natural. Anna noticed, but didn't name it. Lucas was visiting his mother more. That was good. The fact that his visits aligned with hers was simply logistics, except it started to feel like more. The way he'd remember things she'd mentioned weeks ago, the bookstore where she worked, the author she'd been trying to find, the park she liked, the way he'd ask follow-up questions that showed he'd actually listened, the way he started bringing things. A book Margaret wanted, pastries from near Anna's neighborhood, tea Anna preferred. Small gestures, nothing extravagant, just thoughtfulness that hadn't existed before. Margaret watched with quiet satisfaction, didn't push, just created space for it to unfold. One afternoon, after Margaret excused herself for a phone call, Lucas and Anna were left alone. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just unfilled. Lucas set his teacup down, looked at Anna directly, not through her, at her. "I owe you an apology." Anna's breath caught. "You don't." "I do." His voice was quiet, certain. "At the restaurant. The way I spoke to you, it was inexcusable." Anna hadn't expected this. "You were having a bad day," she said carefully. "That's generous, but it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice." He paused. "I treated you like you didn't matter. And I'm sorry." The apology hung between them, naked, undefended. Anna felt something shift, not forgiveness, but space for the possibility of it. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My mother talks about you often, about how you listen, how you're present." He paused. "She's right, I've seen it. She makes it easy." "No, you make it easy. There's a difference." Margaret returned before Anna could respond. The conversation shifted, but something had been established. Fragile, new, real. The following week, Lucas arrived early, already there when Anna rang the bell, already settled in the sitting room. "I hope you don't mind," Margaret said. Lucas had some free time. They fell into conversation easily. Lucas asked about Anna's week. She asked about his work. Margaret mostly just watched them find their rhythm. Lucas mentioned a gallery opening, new artist, contemporary work. He had no one to go with. "You should take Anna," Margaret said, casual. Anna's pulse jumped. "Oh, I don't think—" "Do you like art?" Lucas asked. "I do, but then you should come if you're interested." Anna looked at Margaret, found only encouragement. "Okay," Anna heard herself say. "I'd like that." Lucas smiled. "Saturday evening? I can pick you up." Anna nodded, felt the ground shift. Saturday came too quickly. Anna changed 3 times, told herself it didn't matter, but her hands shook as she applied lipstick. Lucas arrived exactly on time, held the car door, said she looked nice, simple. The gallery was small, intimate. They moved through it slowly, talked about what they saw, what they felt. Lucas didn't perform expertise, just shared his perspective and asked for hers. Listened, responded thoughtfully. Anna found herself relaxing, forgetting to measure words, just existing with someone genuinely interested in her thoughts. Afterward, they got coffee, sat in a small cafe, talked about things beyond art, or his mother, or the restaurant. Growing up, mistakes made, the distance between who they'd thought they'd become and who they were. Lucas told her about inheriting expectations, building a life that looked successful but felt hollow. Anna told him about leaving home with dreams that dissolved into survival, about finding dignity in work others dismissed. They talked for hours, until the cafe staff started cleaning around them. Lucas drove her home, walked her to her door. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I enjoyed this." "I did too." They stood close, but not touching. The space between them charged with something neither named. "Can I see you again?" Lucas asked. "Not at my mother's. Just us." Anna's heart hammered. Every instinct told her to say no, to protect herself from the inevitable moment when he'd remember who she was and what she wasn't. But she looked at him, at the way he was looking at her, not with pity or condescension, but with genuine hope. That made him vulnerable. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." Lucas smiled, stepped back, waited until she was inside. Anna closed the door, leaned against it, felt her chest tighten. Fear. Hope. The terrifying possibility that this might actually be real. They started seeing each other regularly. Not dates, not officially, just time spent together. Coffee before Anna's shifts, walks through the city, quiet dinners at places that weren't trying to impress. Lucas was different in these spaces, away from boardrooms and expectations. He laughed more easily, asked questions without agenda, listened without performing. Anna watched him carefully, waiting for the mask to slip, for him to remember she was someone who served people like him, not someone who belonged beside him. But the moment never came. Lucas showed up, consistently, remembered things she mentioned, brought books he thought she'd like, never made her feel small, just treated her like someone worth knowing. It terrified her, because the more time they spent together, the harder it became to maintain her walls, to remember why she shouldn't let herself feel what she was starting to feel. One evening, after dinner at a small Italian place, they walked along the river. "Can I ask you something?" Lucas said. "Okay. Why did you start visiting my mother?" Anna considered the real answer. "She looked lonely, and I know what that feels like." Lucas nodded slowly. "She was lonely. I didn't realize how much until you came around. I should have noticed. You were busy. That's not an excuse. I told myself I was being a good son, but I wasn't really seeing her. I was managing her." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "You saw her, really saw her, not because you had to, because you chose to. She's easy to care about. Most people don't try. You did." He paused. "And I'm grateful for her. And for me." Anna's chest tightened. "For you. You made me realize I'd stopped being present, stopped seeing people." He looked at her. Really looked. "You reminded me I'm not special. I just showed up. That's exactly what makes it special." Lucas stepped closer. "Most people don't. You do. Consistently, without expecting anything in return." Anna felt her throat tighten. "Lucas, I know I don't have the right to say this. I know there's no reason you should trust me," he breathed. "But I care about you more than I expected." The words hung between them, vulnerable, undefended. Anna's heart hammered. Every instinct told her to run, but she looked at him, at the way he was looking at her, with something raw and honest. "I care about you too," she heard herself say. "And that scares me." "Why?" "Because you're you, and I'm someone who spilled champagne on you. Someone you looked at like I was nothing. Someone who doesn't belong in your world." Lucas was quiet. "You're right. I did look at you that way, and I'll regret that forever." He stepped closer. "But you're not nothing. You're someone who showed my mother more kindness than anyone has in years. Someone who shows up, who cares. And if my world doesn't have room for that, then my world is wrong." Anna felt tears press against her eyes. He reached for her hand, carefully. She didn't pull away. "I know this is complicated, but I want to try if you do." Anna looked at their hands, at the impossible reality of this moment. She should say no, should protect herself. But she was tired of protecting herself, tired of believing she didn't deserve something good. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try." Lucas smiled, then pulled her closer and held her like she was something precious. Anna let herself be held, let herself believe that maybe this was real. Over the following weeks, they stopped pretending this was casual, started calling what they had by its name. Lucas was careful, never flaunted wealth, never made Anna feel small. He chose places she'd feel comfortable, made sure she knew this was equal. Anna tried to silence the voice that whispered she didn't belong. Lucas made it easier. He introduced her to friends as someone important. Some were kind, some politely confused, a few barely civil. Lucas noticed, and stopped bringing her around people who made her feel less than. "I don't need their approval," he said when Anna asked why he'd declined an invitation. "I need you to feel comfortable. That matters more." Margaret watched it all with quiet satisfaction, didn't interfere, just welcomed them both and smiled when they sat close together, when Lucas's hand found Anna's without thought. One afternoon, as Anna helped with tea, Margaret spoke. "He's different with you. Softer, more himself." She smiled. "He stopped performing." Anna felt the weight settle deep. "I'm glad he found you," Margaret said. "And I'm glad I found you too." Anna's throat tightened. "I'm glad I found you both." Margaret squeezed Anna's hand once, a gesture that said everything words couldn't. Things weren't perfect. There were moments when Anna felt the gap, when Lucas mentioned things casually, property, business deals, and she had to remind herself this was just his reality. Moments when she worked a double shift and came home exhausted, and Lucas didn't understand why she couldn't just quit. Moments when perspectives clashed, but they tried. Lucas asked questions, listened without defensiveness, acknowledged blind spots, made space for Anna's reality. Anna let herself be vulnerable, stopped pretending everything was fine, started trusting Lucas wouldn't leave just because things got complicated, and slowly, carefully, they built something real, not perfect, not easy, but honest. 6 months later, Anna stood in the restaurant's staff room, folding her apron for the last time. It felt strange, final. This place had been part of her life for so long. The routine, the rhythm, the careful invisibility she'd perfected, and now she was leaving, not because Lucas had asked her to. He hadn't. Had been careful never to suggest her work was beneath her or him, but Anna had made a choice. She'd been accepted into a program, art restoration, something she'd dreamed about years ago and convinced herself was impractical, too expensive, the kind of dream people like her didn't get to pursue. Lucas had found the program, mentioned it casually one evening, said nothing about cost. Just, "I thought you might be interested." Anna had researched it, stayed up late reading about the curriculum, the opportunities, the possibility of a future that looked different than survival. Then she'd applied, on her own, without telling anyone. Because if she was going to do this, it had to be her choice, her accomplishment. When the acceptance letter came, she'd stared at it for 20 minutes, felt something shift inside her chest. Hope, the dangerous kind. She'd told Lucas that night. He'd smiled, genuinely, and said simply, "I'm proud of you. Not 'I knew you could,' or 'see, I told you so.' Just pride, uncomplicated, real." Margaret had cried, had pulled Anna into a hug and whispered, "You deserve this. You deserve all of it." And now Anna was leaving, closing this chapter, walking away from the version of herself who'd spilled champagne and absorbed humiliation and believed she didn't belong anywhere that mattered. Maria found her in the staff room. "So this is really it?" Anna nodded. "This is it. You're going to do great things." Anna smiled. "Thank you for everything." Maria hugged her. "Quick, fierce. Go, before I get sentimental." Anna left through the back door. The same door she'd pushed through 6 months ago with shaking hands and burning face, but now it just felt like a door. That evening, Lucas took her to dinner, somewhere new, a place that belonged to neither of their old worlds, just theirs. They sat across from each other, wine glasses catching candlelight. "How does it feel?" Lucas asked. Anna considered the question. Terrifying, exciting, real. Real is good. Real is complicated. She smiled. "But yes, good." Lucas reached across the table, took her hand. "I'm proud of you, not because of the program, because you chose yourself. That takes courage." Anna looked at their hands, at how natural it had become. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said quietly. "Yes, you could have. You would have found your way. You always do. I just got to be there while you did." Anna felt her throat tighten. "You're giving me too much credit." "I'm giving you exactly the right amount." He paused. "You changed my life, Anna. You saw my mother when everyone else looked past her. You saw me when I'd stopped seeing myself. You reminded me what matters. That's not nothing, that's everything." Anna didn't know what to say, felt the weight of his words settle somewhere deep, somewhere permanent. "I love you," Lucas said. Simple, direct, just truth. Anna's breath caught. They hadn't said it yet, had danced around it but never spoken it out loud. "I love you too," she said, and meant it. Completely. Lucas smiled, not the polished smile he wore in boardrooms, the real one, the one that reached his eyes. They sat there, hands linked across the table, two people who'd started in completely different worlds and somehow found their way to the same place. It wasn't a fairy tale, wasn't perfect. There would be challenges, moments when their differences created friction, times when the gap between their pasts felt too wide. But they'd learned something important, that seeing someone, really seeing them, was the most radical thing you could do. That presence mattered more than performance. That showing up consistently without expectation could change everything. A year later, Anna walked into Margaret's sitting room with a portfolio under her arm. Lucas was already there. He smiled, stood, kissed her hello, a gesture so natural now it required no thought. Margaret looked up from her tea. "Is that it?" Anna nodded, set the portfolio on the table. First project, completed. She opened it carefully, revealed the restoration work she'd done. A small painting, 18th century, nothing famous, but beautiful. Damaged by time and neglect and brought back to life through patience and skill. Margaret leaned forward, studied it with careful attention. "It's stunning." "It was hidden," Anna said quietly, "under layers of damage, under assumptions about what it was worth. But it was there the whole time, just waiting for someone to see it." Lucas met her eyes, understood the metaphor. "Like you," he said softly. Anna smiled. "Like all of us." Margaret reached out, took both their hands, Anna's and Lucas's, held them for a moment, a gesture that said, "This is family, this is what matters, this is home." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Anna believed it. She belonged here, not because of what she did or where she came from or how much money she had, but because she'd chosen to show up, to be present, to see and be seen, and that, it turned out, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Some people walk past you without seeing you. Others look at you and decide you're not worth their time. But then there are the rare ones who stop, who listen, who see something in you that even you had forgotten was there. This story isn't about wealth or status. It's about what happens when someone chooses to see you, really see you, not as a function, not as a mistake, but as a person who matters. Anna didn't set out to change anyone's life. She just showed up, consistently, without expectation. And in doing so, she reminded two people what it meant to be present, to care, to recognize humanity in others, even when the world makes it easy to look away. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show up. Be kind without agenda. See people when the world has made them invisible. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe for more stories that remind you what it means to be human, like if you believe kindness is never wasted. Comment below, have you ever been invisible to someone who should have seen you? You matter more than you know.